mighty. Not because you want to, but you have to. Be bold and no time to be bashful. Grab life by the horns like a natural. Be sharp, be quick, and be agile. Never ever let a competitor catch you. Stay ahead of whatever is trying to pass you. Though it's not a race, sometimes that's how you gotta operate.
Hello everyone, Samuel Ray here, also known to many as Dr. Sam. Welcome to S-Factor Labs. This is the Morning Boot Up, my new series where I just take a topic that I've thought about recently and just talk about it in an unscripted, unplanned fashion. Just my unfiltered thoughts on one topic. So last week what I spoke of was changes in games, especially brought on by my recent experiences with the Armored Core series, and that combined with my extensive experiences of more than 20 years with the fighting game genre, and just seeing how people from those and the Monster Hunter community, so all three of those areas, how long-term fans of niches often are resistant to change, but how change is necessary to grow, and that tradition, for tradition's sake, can often, or at least sometimes, become a hindrance. So, sitting here with my coffee in the morning and just going to talk about, this time, changes in a different way. Because recently I came upon the knowledge of the changing policies on YouTube. As someone who's only been doing YouTube for a little bit, and because of the space I occupy based on my nature, it's not something that actually affects me at all. So apparently recent changes to the YouTube policies put more limitations on being able to monetize while still having profanity or innuendos or other, quote, mature, end quote, language and behaviors in your videos. Now myself, I'm someone who doesn't even use profanity or innuendo in my day-to-day life, so it just comes naturally that my content won't have any of that either. And then the games that I play tend not to be very, filled with profanities or sexual explicit content or, bloody, gory violence. None of the sort. Honestly, the only M games I play are ones that let you toggle off a lot of the elements that make them M-rated. So I pretty much only play the most tame of M games that you can basically turn into a T game with toggles, because options are great. Never lack options. Developers should always make options for their players. That way you can tailor the experience to yourself. And then, the majority of them I play are like the E10 to T-rated range. So Monster Hunter Rise being a T-rated game, and like my bread and butter on this channel, at least up until now, and then Sonic Frontiers being my current big one, which I grew up on the Sonic franchise, so of course when they release a good Sonic game, I'm going to play it. And that one I think is E10, and then Pokemon Unite is also E10. So, there's kind of a general range for the content I feature that's inherently safe from these being struck by these policy changes also. So I'm never going to be really swearing. The games I play aren't going to feature a whole lot of swearing. They may have more swearing than I will ever speak. You'll never hear me say any kind of profanity, just because that's not who I am. And I'm determined to be true to myself and genuine, and in doing so I'm going to be cleaner than most content creators you'll find here on YouTube. So I'm not going to be negatively impacted by these policies much. However, in the wake of these changes, and these changes retroactively affecting people's old uploads, demonetizing them, a lot of people on the internet are really, just for lack of better terms, crying about it. Crying injustice, or that's unfair, or that punishing profanity and such, or bloody violence, or sexually explicit content is is somehow a bad thing. You know, it's impeding creativity or free speech or any number of ways to justify their outrage. And I'm going to be very direct about this on my thoughts, because that's what we're about here is being, you know, direct, being honest, being genuine, and not being afraid to be different. Because in this case, I am different from the majority. I'm someone who's naturally clean, and I'm an adult at that. An adult who doesn't misconstrue, you know, profanity and vulgarity with mature or being an adult, because they aren't synonymous. Just because you're an adult, that doesn't mean that profanity and vulgarity are the only ways to be genuine. That's something that many people mistakenly kind of equate in their heads. And many would say that I'm not real, or I'm not genuine or legitimate or whatever, but I'm as real a person as you'll ever meet. You know, I speak my thoughts with conviction. I'm not afraid to speak my thoughts, even if they're contrary to what is held by the majority in whatever circle or space. I'm not going to be anything but genuinely me. And if that's not real, then there is no such thing as real. So, you know, that is just absolutely false. And I'm living proof that you can express yourself without needing to fall back on profanity. You know, I was raised by my parents to have a broad vocabulary. They had me reading at a kindergarten level at the age of 3. And that was all from my mom's efforts. And then my father raised me on a phrase, small minds use small words. So basically, you know, son, you're intelligent. Show it with the way you speak. Don't fall back on profanities. Use a broader range of words to express yourself clearly and concisely. That's how he raised me. And that stuck with me through my whole life, because most profanity is a variant of like 3 and 4 letter words, you know, 1 or 2 syllables at most, as the base words, the root words. And then they just build upon those. They're very samey, and when overused, they lose their impact as well. Like, if you actually think about it, someone who rarely or never cusses, if they get worked up enough to actually cuss, it has a lot more impact than someone who throws out F-bombs or whatever every other word or every other sentence. And at that point, the whole purpose that people say of it having, you know, more impact than being an important part of language is really lost. It's really self-defeated. So, if anything, you know, you should kind of stick with there's a phrase. I learned this from looking into videos and content talking about game development, especially in the old days, since I grew up on the Sega Genesis, starting in the 90s. Games back then were very limited in budget, in hardware, and there was a phrase that came from that. Limitation breeds creativity. I think that holds absolutely true. Rather than saying that not being able to, you know, say anything and everything you want whenever you want is overly restrictive and some sort of injustice, reframe it in your mind. View it as an opportunity to express yourself more creatively, rather. I don't know why I said it that weird way, but, you know, if you can't say profanity within the first, 8 to 15 seconds of a YouTube video, find other ways to express yourself. Be more creative in how you speak. You know, use it to drive you to become more unique. Don't just use the same old profanity-filled language that the majority of people around you every day use. Find ways to set yourself apart. Myself being someone who doesn't use profanity as my default state of being, that inherently sets me apart. And it always has. No matter where I am, I'm always different from the people around me in some way or fashion, based on how I carry myself, how I conduct myself, or my thoughts or beliefs or conclusions on things, or even my approach to things. I'm used to being different. Not saying that I'm better, I'm just used to being different. Different's not always better, but it's also not always worse. It's just different. And you need to accept the fact that everyone's different. But being different is not a bad thing. You don't have to slot into a mold just because everyone around you does something. So take, if you want to stay on YouTube, then you'll have to get with the program, because while a lot of people like to frame being a YouTuber as being your own boss or whatever, your boss is YouTube. The company that owns YouTube is YouTube's boss, and then YouTube is the boss of everyone who makes content on that platform. They have every legal right to regulate what's allowed on their platform, especially if they want to be able to make ad money instead of charging the users. For it to stay free for the users, they have to make money somewhere. That comes from the advertisers and sponsors. And for that to happen, there has to be some form of structure, some sort of limitations, because not every advertiser will want to be advertised next to certain types of speech or conduct. That's just the facts of the world we live in. That's just reality, and reality is what it is regardless of how anyone feels. That's what makes it reality. So, reality is rigid. So if you want to make it on this platform, you gotta follow the rules. It's just as simple as that. You want a job in life, you have to follow the rules set by your supervisors and their supervisors and the supervisors above them. There's always a chain of command. So, and besides, like I've also said online and in other discussions, without any form of structure or guidelines, humans have kind of destructive tendencies towards others and themselves. Without something to kind of guide us down a productive or positive path, we tend to lean towards more, base inclinations that in the long term are more destructive than they are constructive. So having rules to follow is not a bad thing. Having a sense of propriety, essentially understanding and discerning, using logic to discern what is appropriate for the situation. Everything in its proper place, or a proper place and time for everything. So, just because you want to do something, that doesn't mean it's the right time or place to do it. That's where logic and what used to be called common sense come in, And so if YouTube becomes a place where certain types of content, certain types of behavior, certain types of speech just do not fit, especially if you want to make any money on it, so be it. You adapt to change, or you get left behind. And you know what? Maybe not everybody is suited for that kind of environment. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to be who they are or who they want to be. So that's fine. If someone doesn't want to clean up their speech or their conduct a bit, that's their choice. But they don't have any right, or they don't deserve to stay on a platform that will not allow what they want to do or what they want to say simply because they want it. You don't deserve anything just because you want it. You only deserve what you earn with your own two hands. So, if you want to complain about YouTube making you clean up your speech, find an alternative or adapt. That's literally it. I'm fortunate to be in the position where simply being myself, I'm already within those guidelines, and no matter how strict they make the guidelines, it's not likely to impact me negatively. So, I may not necessarily be the kind of person who will understand having to change what you do, but I still can use logic and knowledge to understand all the angles. There's another phrase: the only people who can see the full picture are those who step out of the frame. So I try not to be restricted to only my own perspective. I try to take into account the perspectives of others, talking to others to understand their perspectives, doing research, and then using simple deductive logic to, discern more aspects of a topic or a matter. So I understand the angles on this, but to speak bluntly, a lot of people are really overblowing their outrage, and they are definitely blowing this out of proportion, and not everyone's being completely reasonable about it. It may not seem fair from certain perspectives, but in some ways it is what it is, and you got to figure out your approach to it. Do you adjust? Do you find an alternative platform? And I know in the case of YouTube, there really is no competing platform, so you're kind of in a bad situation if you're trying to find an alternative. But at that point, it is what it is. You either make do with what you got, or you do the work to get something better. So make a new platform, or band together, or figure out a way to still be yourself and express yourself while staying within the new guidelines. Because again, guidelines are important. They're necessary for us to be, as humanity, to be productive and to go in a more positive direction. That isn't to say that we should let others control us to an extent that, they control who we are. You still should be yourself. And I come from a background, a family culture of individualism, in that we want to be the best individual us that we can be, and not being restricted to the environments that we are either brought up in or just unfortunate enough to be born in. Both my folks came from some bad backgrounds, and they put in the work to forge a better life for themselves. And so they instilled that in me, to be the best individual you can be, instead of slotting into any kind of frame or culture of the people around you. So be an individual, be the best you can be, and that's something that I'm always going to encourage here. Think for yourself, think critically and logically, and come to the best, most objective conclusion that you are capable of coming up with, and then put that into action. Find something to apply from it. In this case, these changes on YouTube, they may not be ideal for those who want to continue on as things were, but it's a growing opportunity. Either increase your professionalism and improve your ways of expressing yourself without having to fall back on profanity and vulgarity, or find a place that is more suited to you. That's pretty much the two options you have. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that matter. I was originally going to talk about elements of random in video games, because in the last episode I mentioned near the end that I've actually kind of come to a recent understanding of what makes like the battle royale genre and roguelikes so enjoyable, and that is because of the elements of random. So maybe I'll talk about that next week. But since the YouTube policy stuff was such a hot topic, I figured since it's fresh in my mind, I would talk about that this week while it's still, the hot button topic. So if you agreed with my thoughts, or if you disagreed, feel free to let me know with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and in the comments. Let's have some civil discussion. I enjoy hearing the thoughts and perspectives of others. While I do assert my thoughts with conviction, and not in a weak way, I still am always open to discussion, as long as the people wanting to talk are respectable and civil. So keep it kind, keep it clean, keep it civil, and keep it intelligent, and let's talk. I'll reply to all the messages that I can down there in the comments. So let's see what you have to say about this. And I will see you next week, hopefully. I'm going to try to make this a weekly thing where I just talk about something, just spitball off the cuff. So yeah, this has been this second episode of Morning Boot Up. I look forward to talking to you again soon. And then subscribe and follow all my platforms. If you want to see more of this content, more of the other variety content that I create, and when I occasionally stream over on Twitch, which often has a high level of viewer involvement, because I definitely have a a more community mindset, and I like to get everyone that I can involved. You know, this is definitely more of a social endeavor for me than a monetary endeavor right now. So, yeah. All right. Have a great one, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Samuel Ray out.